What if curiosity wasn't just harmless? What if one small question had the power to change everything? My story isn't about love. It's about the razor-thin line between desire and regret. They say curiosity killed the cat. Well, for me, curiosity didn't kill me, but it did change my life forever. Thanks for being an amazing supporter. If you're excited for more stories, subscribe now and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Let's dive into this tale together. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to question her marriage, let alone betray it. I was married to Adam, a good man by every measure. He was loving, dependable, and hardworking, the kind of husband many women would dream of. But sometimes, even in the best marriages, a sense of monotony creeps in. It's not about being unhappy, just unfulfilled. It started with a tiny, almost laughable thought. One evening while scrolling through my phone, I stumbled across an article titled, "Does Size Really Matter?" I rolled my eyes at the obvious clickbait, but couldn't resist. Curiosity got the better of me, and before I knew it, I was reading through the piece. As I scanned the words, I found myself wondering about my own life, my own marriage. Adam and I had been together for over 10 years. While our intimacy was steady, it had never been explosive or earth-shattering. He was comforting, reliable, and yes, average in every sense of the word, including in ways I had never previously given much thought to until that moment. That article planted a seed in my mind. It wasn't that I was unhappy or even dissatisfied with Adam, it was the not knowing that gnawed at me. What if size really did matter? What if I had been missing out on something profound without even realizing it? That single question simmered in the back of my mind for weeks. It became a quiet, persistent hum, growing louder every time I found myself alone with my thoughts. It wasn't something I could discuss with Adam. How do you even bring up something like that with the man you love, the man who trusts you so completely? The guilt of even entertaining such thoughts weighed heavily on me, but no matter how much I told myself to stop, the curiosity only grew stronger. One night, after Adam had gone to bed, I found myself opening my phone and typing questions into a search engine, questions I never thought I'd ask. Stories, forums, and anonymous confessions appeared, each one more revealing than the last. It felt like opening Pandora's box. Women shared their experiences, their secrets, and their regrets. Many insisted that size made a difference, not just physically, but emotionally. I felt a strange cocktail of guilt and excitement as I read. Was it wrong to wonder? Was it wrong to want to know? Eventually, wondering wasn't enough. I told myself it was purely for research, just to satisfy my curiosity, nothing more. I created an anonymous profile on a discreet dating site. I didn't use a photo of myself, just a vague description of what I was looking for. It felt thrilling in a way I hadn't experienced in years. The moment I submitted the profile, messages started pouring in. Men of all types introduced themselves, some with crude comments, others with polite charm, but I had only one criterion. I was searching for someone who fit the description of what I was curious about, and then I found him. His name was Lucas. He was in his early 30s, with a confident smile and a physique that matched his photos. He was charming, flirty, but respectful. He wasn't afraid to address the very thing I was curious about. Bold, but not overbearing. I found myself smiling at his messages, my heart racing as our conversation deepened. He lived about an hour away and seemed genuinely interested in meeting. He never pushed, never made me feel cheap. Instead, he made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. This is insane, I thought to myself. What am I doing? But no amount of self-reproach could stop me. I told myself it would be just once, just to see, just to know. I had no idea how that single decision would spiral into something far greater than I could control. The day I agreed to meet Lucas, I told Adam I was meeting an old friend for coffee. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did plan on having coffee, just not with a friend. Lucas and I had decided to meet at a small, quiet hotel on the outskirts of town. It wasn't shady, but it wasn't extravagant either, just anonymous enough to feel safe. As I drove there, my stomach churned with nerves. I had already crossed a line the moment I created that profile, but meeting him in person? This was something else entirely. This was a betrayal I could never undo. When I arrived, Lucas was already waiting for me in the lobby. He was taller than I had imagined, with broad shoulders and an easy smile that immediately put me at ease. He walked toward me, casual and confident, as if we were old friends meeting after years apart. "You made it," he said, his voice warm and smooth. I nodded, too nervous to speak. My mind screamed at me to turn around, to leave before I did something I couldn't take back. But my body stayed rooted in place, drawn to him in a way I couldn't explain. We didn't waste much time. Lucas had already booked a room. As we stepped inside, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. My wedding ring felt heavy on my finger, a silent reminder of the promises I was about to shatter. "This is your last chance to back out," Lucas said softly, his eyes searching mine. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest, but only for a moment. "I want this," I whispered. Saying it out loud made it feel real, terrifyingly real. The next few hours were a blur. Lucas was everything I had read about and more. Confident, attentive, skillful in ways I had never experienced. He made me feel things I didn't know I was capable of feeling. For the first time in my life, I felt a kind of pleasure that was almost overwhelming. When it was over, we lay there in silence. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing with conflicting emotions. Guilt, satisfaction, excitement, and shame, all tangled together in a chaotic mess. Lucas turned to me, his hand tracing lazy circles on my arm. "Was it worth it?" he asked, his voice soft. I couldn't look at him. Instead, I nodded, biting my lip to keep from crying. It had been worth it, and that was the most terrifying part. I had risked everything for one afternoon, and I knew, deep down, that I would do it again. As I drove home, I replayed every moment in my mind, comparing it to the years I'd spent with Adam. It wasn't just the physical difference. It was the way Lucas had made me feel, alive, desired, free. When I walked through the door, Adam greeted me with his usual warmth. "How was coffee?" he asked, pulling me into a hug. "It was nice," I lied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. That night, as I lay in bed next to Adam, I couldn't stop thinking about Lucas. The curiosity that had driven me to this point had transformed into something else entirely. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something far more dangerous. I was hooked. Darker. But the truth was, my thoughts were consumed by Alex. Every text message he sent made my heart race. Every memory of his touch, his kiss, replayed in my mind when I lay next to Daniel at night. I started craving Alex, not just physically, but emotionally. It wasn't just about the excitement he brought into my life. It was the contrast. With Alex, I felt wanted, adventurous, alive. With Daniel, I felt safe but unchallenged. I convinced myself it was only natural to want both, the stability of my marriage and the passion Alex provided. The lies came easier with time. Errands, gym sessions, lunch dates with friends, each became a convenient alibi to explain my absences. Every lie I told was delivered with a convincing smile, and Daniel never questioned me. That made it all too easy. I hated lying to him, hated the person I was becoming. But the truth? I didn't want to stop. Alex had awakened something in me that I couldn't ignore, and for his part, he never pushed me for more than I was willing to give. He didn't ask about Daniel, didn't pry into my life outside of our stolen moments. That made it easier to compartmentalize what we had. When I was with Alex, it felt like stepping into an alternate world, one where my responsibilities, my guilt, the weight of my marriage, None of it existed. The more time I spent with him, the more I understood why I couldn't stop. It wasn't just about the physical connection, though that was undeniably part of it. It was how he made me feel. Seen. With him, I wasn't just Daniel's wife or a homemaker. I was a woman, vibrant, daring, and reckless. Then one evening, after yet another afternoon with Alex, I came home to find Daniel waiting for me. He had cooked dinner. "I thought I'd surprise you," he said with a warm smile. In that moment, the weight of what I was doing hit me like a freight train. Here was my husband, the man who had stood by me through everything, who still looked at me as though I was the most important person in the world. And here I was, betraying him, again and again. I kissed him on the cheek, thanked him, and forced myself to push Alex out of my mind. That night, I resolved to stop, to end things with Alex once and for all. But the very next week, I was back in his arms. The addiction was stronger than my guilt, stronger than the love I still had for Daniel. Every time I told myself it would be the last time, I ended up right back where I started. Alex didn't demand anything from me, but he wasn't oblivious either. "You keep saying this is the last time," he teased one afternoon as we lay tangled in the sheets. I laughed weakly, but there was no humor in it. "It's complicated." "Life always is," he replied, brushing a strand of hair from my face. The truth was, I didn't want to stop. The thought of giving Alex up felt like cutting off a part of myself, but deep down, I knew I couldn't keep this up forever. The lies were piling up, and sooner or later, something would give. For now, though, I pushed those thoughts aside. I wasn't ready to face the consequences. Not yet. My life became a carefully orchestrated performance. To Daniel, I was still the loving, dependable wife. I laughed at his jokes, planned our meals, kept our life together running seamlessly. But beneath that polished surface, I was unraveling. Alex had become an addiction I couldn't resist. It wasn't just the physical thrill, though that was undeniable. It was the way he made me feel. When I was with him, I wasn't just Daniel's wife or some woman going through the motions of a predictable life. I was wild, reckless, consumed by the allure of something forbidden. Daniel never suspected a thing. His trust in me was absolute, and that made my actions feel even more surreal. It was as though my double life existed in a separate reality, one that never touched the safe, stable bubble of my marriage. But dreams don't last forever. One afternoon, as Alex and I lay together in a quiet hotel room, he turned to me with an intensity in his eyes that made my chest tighten. "You know this can't last forever, right?" he said softly. His words startled me. "What do you mean?" I asked, propping myself up on one elbow. "This," he said, gesturing between us. "I know you love your husband. I'm not trying to mess with that, but you can't keep splitting yourself in two like this." I swallowed hard, his words cutting through the haze I'd been living in. He was right. As much as I wanted to pretend I could keep both worlds separate forever, I knew I was playing with fire. Alex reached for my hand, his touch gentle but firm. "You've got to figure out what you want, Emma. I'm not saying this to push you away, but you can't keep walking this tightrope. It's going to snap eventually." His words lingered long after I left that day. For the first time, I couldn't brush away the guilt and pretend everything was fine. That night, as I lay in bed next to Daniel, I couldn't sleep. I watched him breathe, his face soft and peaceful in the dim light. He had no idea about the storm raging inside me. I thought about everything Alex had given me: passion, excitement, the thrill of something new. But I also thought about what I stood to lose. Daniel wasn't just my husband. He was my partner, my best friend, the man who had built a life with me. I couldn't risk losing that. I wouldn't. The next morning, I made a decision. I met Alex one last time, the weight of my choice pressing down on me the entire drive. When I walked into the room, he greeted me with his usual charm, but there was a knowing look in his eyes. "This is it, isn't it?" he asked softly. I nodded, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "I can't do this anymore, Alex. I love my husband. I love my life. I can't keep risking it." Alex didn't argue or try to change my mind. He simply reached out and took my hand. "I get it," he said. "And for what it's worth, I hope you find everything you're looking for." I smiled through my tears, grateful for his understanding. Saying goodbye to him felt like letting go of a part of myself, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Driving home that day, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had found the answer to the question that started it all. Did passion and excitement matter? Yes, but it wasn't everything. What mattered more was the life I had built with Daniel, the love and trust we shared. When I walked through the door, Daniel was there, smiling as he always did. I hugged him tightly, burying my face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. "What's this for?" he asked, laughing softly. "Just because," I said, my voice thick with emotion. I had made my choice, and this time I would keep my promise.